Aside from a very limited run of Alfa Romeo 8C models, Alfa as a brand has not been available in the United States for quite some time, but that is all changing now. Right now we are taking a look at the Alfa Romeo 4C Spider, which is sort of the convertible version of the 4C Coupe. Up front we get this very Italian looking front end with this large grille right here, two large openings on either side of that very distinctive Alfa Romeo shape. And from the front you can see this has some sexy lines, but it's also quite simple, which tends to be the flavor of Alfa Romeo overall in Europe. In terms of overall length, the 4C is a very small vehicle for the United States. This is between the Mini Cooper 4-door and the Mini Cooper 2-door in overall size at 157 inches long. We're told that under the hood you won't find anything at all really, and that's a good thing because we can't actually open this hood on our own. It is actually screwed shut. The reason for that, of course, is because you won't find the engine up front. You'll actually find the engine right back here. This is technically a mid-engined vehicle, and that's because we actually have a cargo area behind the engine. So you can see we have a very small trunk right back here, and then the engine is right back here between the trunk and the driver. This engine is a 1 3/4 liter 4-cylinder engine. It's very closely related to the engines that we see in other Fiat Chrysler products, especially their worldwide product portfolio with small 4-cylinder engines. This produces 237 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, and that may not sound like a lot of power, but we'll go into more about why that's important later. If you like your performance cars quiet, you should know that this Alfa does not have a muffler at all. You heard that right. All we have are catalytic converters, and then we have the exhaust tip right here. There is no muffler, no resonator, nothing. Light curb weight is what the 4C is all about, and that is the key to its performance and its excellent fuel economy. You can see right down here that we have a carbon fiber chassis. The vast majority of this car is either carbon fiber, composite, or aluminum. In Europe, that means this vehicle weighs just over 2,100 pounds. In the United States, it weighs just under 2,500 pounds. Now, for the United States market, some significant changes had to be made, like the addition of side curtain airbags on the doors, a slightly stronger carbon fiber body in order to meet US crash regulations, and a few other features on the inside that Americans generally demand, like air conditioning, an adjustable passenger seat, etc. Now let's talk about the top. Obviously that is a key difference between the Spider and the non-Spider version. Again, I have it right here because it couldn't fit in the trunk with my bag. Now it is relatively easy to install once you get the hang of it. We simply drop it on the car in the right location. There's a little red dot there to indicate the middle of the front. We insert the first 2 pins, pull the levers, latch it down right like that. Then we simply go over to the other side of the car. We repeat the process, making sure to tuck that in right there, align it up, drop those pins, snap it down. Now removing it is actually fairly simple from the inside. You just remove those 2 pins, twist them, and they come right out. Then we unlatch the one side, flip it over on top of itself, unlatch the other side, flip it over on top of itself, and you can very easily grab it and pull it inside the car. When it comes to front seat comfort, you have to keep in mind that the 4C is all designed around that lightweight mission because we really have very limited adjustment ability. We don't have an adjustable headrest, we don't have adjustable lumbar support, and the reclinability itself is very limited. So for instance, if I scoot this seat all the way forward so you can clearly see that this seat back is not touching the back of the car, and I pull this lever, you can see that it's already reclined as far as it will go. Again, in the mission to save weight, some things are missing in this cabin, like we don't have a glove box of any description in this car. We do, however, have a cell phone slot right here on the side of each seat where you can insert a cell phone. In kind of an odd choice over here in the center of the dashboard, we do have an Alpine almost aftermarket looking stereo. Below the climate controls, we have the buttons that control our transmission. Now this is a dual clutch transmission, so some people may refer to it as an automated manual or as an automatic transmission. It will shift automatically for you, or you can command the shifts with the paddle shifters. The gauge cluster is mounted in this little binnacle right here above the steering wheel. Our model has the optional carbon fiber trim. The instrument cluster is a full LCD instrument cluster, and as you can see right here on the side of your screen, we do have the additional warning lights outside of the screen. Moving out to the steering wheel, this is a 2-spoke steering wheel design. Now again, we don't have electric power steering, so the steering effort that you get when you're stationary like this is going to be quite a bit higher than basically every other vehicle in the United States. I can't hear you is a phrase that I frequently heard when there was a passenger in the car, and that's also why this is a voiceover rather than me talking to the camera, because the 4C is quite loud in the cabin. There's no carpet because the floor mats screw directly to the carbon fiber tub, and there's essentially no sound deadening material of any kind. There's thin glass, and that 1 3/4 liter turbocharged engine is only about 4 inches away from my head. There's also no muffler going on in this vehicle, as I said earlier. Now the no muffler thing is optional because you can get the 4C with a standard very small muffler or the optional no muffler pack. You actually have to pay $500 extra in order to get them to remove the muffler. The result of having no muffler is fantastic when you're canyon carving, but considerably less fantastic when you're on a long road trip or a daily commute. Now on the flip side, because we don't have sound deadening foam in this vehicle, you can actually hear everything that the engine and wheels are up to while you're driving the car. This allows you a much more raw and much more connected experience of the vehicle than you can find in anything else out there on the road. Although the standard 205 with tires may not sound terribly wide up front, parallel parking maneuvers do require upper body strength. The key thing to know about the 4C is that the steering wheel diameter is small and the rack takes just 2.7 turns to go from lock to lock. So not only do we have manual steering, which ups the effort, we also have a narrow steering wheel, which also ups the effort, and a relatively quick ratio, which again ups the effort. So the steering is definitely heavy at low speeds. At higher speeds, however, the quick ratio definitely takes some getting used to, because this sort of has a go-kart-like feel. It can feel a little bit twitchy at times out on the highway. It's very, very light, very easy to turn in. The quickest little turn on the steering wheel causes a large degree of motion to the vehicle. Now that's not a bad thing, that's actually a very good thing, because the Alfa Romeo 4C has quite simply the best steering feel available on a new car in the United States. This actually makes a modern Porsche or BMW feel fat and lazy out on the road, because in the 4C you can actually feel what the car is doing at all times. When it comes to the suspension, you'll notice that the 4C is incredibly stiff, and that's why these cameras are jiggling around an awful lot. But I was actually surprised that the 4C feels relatively stable out on broken pavement. It doesn't really feel as upset as some cars that are a little bit heavier than this. Now don't confuse a well-sorted suspension with the comfortable one, however, because the ride is definitely harsh in the 4C, and it gets harsher if you opt for the up-level 18 and 19-inch wheel package. This is a stark contrast from something again like a Porsche Boxster or a Porsche Cayman, which are designed with creature comforts in mind and an owner set that's more interested in knowing the car is track capable rather than actually taking the car to the track. You'll think that the lightweight construction would yield better stopping distances. However, it actually takes a little bit longer in this to go from 60 to 0 than something like a Corvette or a Boxster. Now, the increase in stopping distance isn't just tied with the light curb weight. It's actually tied with the narrow tires, which are enabled by the light curb weight. Because the vehicle is lighter, we didn't have to put as wide a tires as you find on the competition on the car. Unfortunately, that actually does affect your braking distance. Still, just over 100 feet is really quite good for a 60 to 0 time. Really tight winding roads like this are really what the 4C was designed for. Now this is also where you'll really notice how stiff this suspension is. This is also where you begin to realize that we've really become soft as a people with power steering, because it takes an awful lot more effort to steer this around the corners, and you really have to pay more attention than you do in a car with electric power steering. Now the flip side for that is we get much more feedback from this steering column. As I said, this thing really fights you back. When you're in the corners and there are bumps and undulations, you can really see this steering wheel shaking around. You can take a look at that picture up there on the side of your screen of the steering wheel, and you can really see this sucker fighting. Now I love a car that's al dente, as I say, has a little bit of fight left in it, and this definitely has that going on. Pricing for 2015 is fairly easy to understand. There are some standalone options, there are a few packages, and things start at $53,900 for the coupe version, and you add $10,000 if you want the Spider with the top off. Now that may sound a little expensive, but a Porsche Cayman or a Porsche Boxster are really the only direct competition to this model, and I don't really think that they're that direct. A Cayman or a Boxster will set you back right around $52,000 starting, But if you want one that's as fast as this 0 to 60, you'll need to be prepared to pay at least $82,000 for the Boxster and about $84,000 for a Cayman GT4. Now, even though both Porsches produce significantly more power than the 4C we're taking a look at right here, they're significantly heavier as well. And that's why this will go from 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. And in order to get 4.3 seconds out of the Boxster, you have to pay that $82,000. The real problem, of course, is that there is no direct competitor for the 4C. Sure, there are lots of options out there that can get you from 0 to 60 just about as fast. There are even options out there that will hold the road just about as well as the 4C. However, none of those options is really the same kind of thing. They're still going to be apples and oranges comparisons. The Cayman and the Boxster are much heavier, much more civilized vehicles. They would actually be much more comfortable as a daily driver, but they're not going to be nearly as direct, nearly as much fun as what we get right here. It's that dedication to ultra lightweight construction that enables the 4C to be the way that it is. There are compromises in every new vehicle out there on the market, and the 4C is really no different. The compromises here just tend to favor performance over driver comfort. Now that said, there are many fun ways to get from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds these days, but the 4C is probably one of the most unique and one of the most fun ways to do that. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Be sure and click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Check out the other videos on this channel, and I'll see you next week.